Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lonnie Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lonnie Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm newly human and strangely literal story expert Lonnie Diane Rich.
And I'm evil, skanky researcher and still dead co-host Dr. Kelly Jones. And I think I'm kind of gay.
And I'm meat process and film scholar Noelle LaCroix, and we're here today to talk about Still Pretty, the podcast that has taken up our Saturday mornings for the past 3.5 years.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll show up on time and get to be Cowboy Guy.
I may be dead, but I'm still pretty. Let's go on patrol.
All right, we have no summary this week because we are not talking about an episode. We are talking about all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and also mostly all of Still Pretty and the experience of recording it. With me here today, of course, is Noelle LaCroix, who has been one of the most amazing co-hosts that has ever existed in the world of podcasting ever.
Why, thank you.
You're so welcome. And another amazing podcasting co-host, Dr. Kelly Jones of Still Dead fame, the Angel podcast, where we ran through Angel 2 episodes at a time because one episode would have killed us. So anyway, I didn't feel that it was appropriate to do the last episode of Still Pretty without Dr. Jones because Dr. Jones has been like an integral part of this podcast from the beginning. We are a triumvirate of best friends. She has been there in the background pretty much every week. She has given us insights. We cite her all the time. So we had to have her with us today. Kelly, welcome to Still Pretty.
Thank you, baby. Thanks for letting me come in for the finale. This is awesome. We're going to have fun.
Oh my God, it's so wonderful to have you both here. This has been, an experience for me. I'm definitely going to be talking about that in a minute. And having my two best friends here with me while I go through it has been the most amazing thing. And when I look back on my life, there are going to be a lot of highlights, and Still Pretty is going to be right up there at the top.
Aww.
Mostly, partially because of Buffy, but mostly because of the two of you. So thank you so much for being here with me today. It's a big day. So I wanted to get started kind of talking about, why are we talking about Buffy? And it's funny because my relationship with Buffy is really complicated. When it was airing, a very good friend of mine named Mike, who is out there listening.
Hi, Mike.
You all have heard me refer to him as Babs. We started calling each other Babs in college for some reason. I'm sure he will remind me what it is. Anyway, he told me that it was a great show and that I had to watch it. And then it was like season 1 at that point, and I watched one episode one night and was like, no, I'm not going to watch a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, I just graduated from film school and I'm better than that. Like, that was my 1920s Lonnie. I was an idiot. I was a little idiot. So I was completely snobby about it. And then years later, I started writing books and getting involved in the romance writing community. And everybody was always talking about two things, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Outlander. And I was like, okay. So I had Netflix. It was with Netflix would send you DVDs. They'd send you 3 DVDs and you'd watch one and you'd send it back. And as soon as they got it, they'd send you the next one in your queue. And so I started watching Buffy and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I brought my husband at the time, my kid's dad, in on it, and he loved it. And so the two of us would sit there and watch it. And the very second we finished one DVD, we'd be like, get that fucker in the mail. And we would get it back to Netflix so that the next one would be here before we finished the other 2 DVDs. It was this whole very complicated process. But one of the things that I had been constantly told by other writers is that they learned a lot about writing from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I'd gotten a 2-book deal with Warner Books that is now Hachette, and didn't know what I was doing. And I don't like not knowing what I'm doing. I like to fully research everything so that I can know what I'm doing and do it well. And that's what started my obsession with stories and storytelling. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer was right there. I was watching Buffy and just absorbing and learning, and I watched it over and over and over again. And I will say that as a writer, I have learned more about writing from Buffy than from any other source. And so being able to talk about it critically and analyze it and talk about the storytelling, but also talk about like what it means as a cultural phenomenon, has been a really incredible experience for me. So Noelle, why don't you tell us why you talk about Buffy?
Why me?
You know,
why me? Why Buffy? Well, I love that you put "Why Buffy" as the heading in this section of our script, because the short answer is that Buffy was the show Lonnie was working on at the time. I mean, that is partially the answer. If it had been Lost or The X-Files or literally anything else, and you'd said, hey, you want to do a podcast with me about this thing that I'm working on? I'd be like, yeah, all right. But I mean, so that's the short answer. But the real answer is that Buffy is a show that was and is important to people who are important to me. And the equally real and possibly best answer is the series depicted one of TV's first lesbian relationships, which opened the door for more LGBTQ plus characters on television, while also being deeply meaningful and resonant for a substantial chunk of my community. The connection and friendship between Willow and Tara that grows into a romance gave a lot of young queer viewers hope for their own futures. And I can only imagine the impact of seeing mainstream queerness at a relatively young age. Buffy isn't a particularly progressive show, but it's still pretty rare to see a naturally progressing relationship between 2 women on screen that isn't salacious and isn't a punchline. And not only do we get to see queer characters fall in love on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we get to see them be accepted by their friends. And that would have been huge for the show's target demographic at the time. And it kind of still is, unfortunately. I wish that aspect of the show seemed dated.
Right.
But I mean, it's still a big deal. Just in terms of queer representation in pop culture. So that's why Buffy for me.
What about you, Kelly?
So a little bit like you, Lonnie, it really taught me to be open to a story that folks who know me think I will love, even if the premise sounds ridiculous to me.
Right.
Because when Buffy was airing, I was way early 20s and I was a single mom. I was working full time. I was working my way through college. And my friends were like, you have to watch this show. And I'm like, it's a teenage vampire slayer. I have got a baby on a hip and I do no, thank you. There is no part of this that appeals to me. Plus I'd seen the movie. So,
which was not great.
But see, a long time ago, there was this thing called cable TV. and on cable TV, you had this thing called reruns. And you weren't in charge of when they happened. Things just showed up and you either watched them or you didn't. And that was it. And one night, Buffy was on. And I think I decided to watch it because people had told me, so many times. And the episode ended up being Fool for Love. And so, I mean, come on, right? There's this smoking hot, here endeth the lesson, slayers are in love with death, thing. and then Spike shows up at Buffy's house with a shotgun, only to sit down beside her, when she's crying. And I was hooked. Like, I was hooked. So it's really because Spike, and Willow and Tara also. But really, for me, the show is mostly about Willow and Spike, and their arcs from sidekick villain to protagonist champion. And Faith, because we get a real redemption arc from a character who does not apologize for being who she is. Faith is my slayer. But mostly it's Willow. As Willow goes, so goes my nation. Because she teaches us, challenge the way things are. Ask questions. Embrace your gifts. Be gay. Do crimes. Learn and learn some more. And then just absorb all the books into the very fiber of your being and go destroy the universe, because sometimes you just need to flay a dude. And I'm like, yes, this is a philosophy with which I align. So, the show it's about courage and humor and hope and choice and power and the weight of it and the choice to share it. But for me, it's a show called Buffy that's about Willow. And I love it.
It's really great. So this is why, we love Buffy, respect Buffy as a cultural icon. Why podcast about it is my next question in the script. And I started podcasting about Buffy in, I think, 2014, around there. I had another media company and another husband. We did that together. And for those of you, I talk about this a fair bit, so I think everybody pretty much knows. I would come to the show afraid. It was an abusive relationship. I literally could not form my own opinions. If you asked me what I thought, I would not be able to tell you. I would wait until he told me what he thought, and then I would agree. And I was aware that I was afraid of him, but I couldn't understand why, because it wasn't physically abusive at that time. And that's the thing about emotional abuse. Like, the call is coming, but when someone really masterful and subtle is at the helm, you don't know it's coming from inside the house. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know where the call was coming from. And when all of that blew up and he basically destroyed the media company I'd been building for 7 years at that point, and then people from his past told me things about him that I never knew, and I realized that I had been married to a sociopath, my whole life came down around me. But we hadn't finished Buffy. I was in the middle of season 6, and I hadn't finished talking about it. And I had realized that I also had never actually talked about it because I was incapable of forming an opinion that he didn't like at that point in our marriage. And so I started a new media company. And one of the first things I did was start up the Still Pretty YouTube video series, finishing out season 6 and 7 from where the old podcast had left off. But when I was done with that, it wasn't enough. I wasn't satisfied because I didn't know what I thought about these episodes. I know that he thought things and I agreed with what he thought, but I didn't know what I thought. And so in order for me to podcast about it and talk about it the way that I wanted to, I needed a dance partner. I was still really fragile at that time. I was very, very careful about the people who were close to me, and I kept that number very, very small. And one of them was Noelle. And so I was already doing a podcast, Big Strong Yes, with Dr. Kelly Jones. And I looked to Noelle, who had not podcasted, I believe, at that point, who had never expressed any real interest in it. They had listened to me and Kelly and Big Strong Yes. They were a fan. And then they recorded a video, they recorded an audio clip for the finale of Big Strong Yes, in which they yelled at us. And I loved them from that moment for the rest of my life, and realized this is my person. So we kind of kidnapped Noelle and brought them into our fold. And I was just like, hey, you want to do a podcast with me? Trust me, it'll be fun.
And then what I find so funny about this story is because I am a terrible person, and because we didn't know each other that well at the time, you thought I turned you down.
Oh, yes, I did. I had messaged you about it. Yeah.
Well, and this is also a lesson in directness and how it helps everyone. But yeah, I mean, I remember a late night text stream trying to clear up that misunderstanding. And then I woke up to a wall of text from Lonnie that was like, are you sure? It's 7 seasons of television. That's like 2.5 years of your life. We're not going to be done until 2021.
Which felt like forever away.
Well,
it was such a huge commitment to ask of somebody that we had been friends at that point. We were close, but it had been like 6 months, I think, like that we had been that close.
Like,
and so we were still at
not
the beginning of our
even.
friendship. Yeah.
Oh gosh, like not even. I mean,
yeah, because it was December of the previous year was like the first time you and I had ever spoken on the phone live and in person.
But we did that thing. I mean, we did that thing that I think sometimes happens with friendships where you just sort of like click into a friendship and it's like, oh, yes, I speak this language. Like, I know what this person is talking about. You know, because I had confided in you about some stuff and you were like, oh, yes, that makes total and complete sense to me. So we kind of, you know, we got in that like, it was like the fast track to intimate
Some
conversation
are like that
because we were like, oh yes, I know this thing that you're speaking about. But it was so funny because you were just like, you were like, wait, I thought you said no. And I was like, no, I didn't say no. I literally said, I'll think about it, which I did.
No, I remember being really worried that I had asked you to do this thing and that we were good friends. We'd started this friendship. I trusted you completely, which was a rare thing for me. And I was thinking about it from my perspective. Like, I trust Noelle. I love Noelle. Noelle is amazing and brilliant. And I hadn't thought about it from your perspective, which is this person I've known for a series of months has asked me to make a 3.5-year commitment to her and this show that I am like, you know, I can take or leave. So at that point, once I thought about it from your perspective, I was like, oh my God. And I knew that our friendship had started out with you being a fan. And that does, until you get over that, like there's a period where you have to kind of like do that full transition from being a fan to like looking and realizing that this person is this incredibly flawed human and all of that. And I felt like, what were you supposed to say? What are you supposed to say? No. Like, I didn't feel like I gave you room to say no. And I felt really bad about that.
Well, then what was so funny was I wrote you back this wall of text, which I have saved in my notes app and reads like a Dadaist poem. It's kind of hilarious. But no, what was so funny about that, and continues to be very funny about that, I think, is that I am so happy to be a supporting character. Like, that is my absolute favorite thing in the world. So you were doing this project. You were going to loop back around and start over with Buffy. And I was like, well, yeah, like obviously I can be a support person for this, especially with, you know, some background in like, I don't know, film and television studies, something, you know, I hadn't gotten to flex those muscles, you know, in any sort of real way for a while. But that the whole misunderstanding was so funny, is so funny now. It was like, what are you talking about? Yeah. What are you talking about?
It's so funny. Noelle and I every now and again will have one of those conversations where I'm like, I'm sorry.
Well, and what's hilarious is like you will sometimes apologize for something that I'm like, I did, like that didn't even cross my radar. That's so funny. That's what
being friends with me is. It's getting random apologies at 2 a.m. by text because I just realized that I was an asshole, or I look back at my behavior and I'm like, oh no, that was terrible. What was I thinking? You know, because I get paranoid like that every now and again. And with the people that I love, I get worried, you know, that like they're gonna turn around and just start hating me. So Noelle got a little bit of that traumatized splashback on them. Kelly, what about you? Now, I know you kind of have a similar story of how you got started podcasting. Was that you were a fan and then we became friends and then I was like, hey, you need to podcast with me.
Yeah, my answer is always the same. I podcast about XYZ because you asked me to. Like, that's it.
Because when Lonnie Diane Rich asks you to podcast with her, you say yes. It's just the rule.
Correct.
It is so funny the way you guys say Lonnie Diane Rich like that's a thing. It always cracks me up.
Okay, I'm sorry. How far do you want to divert this podcast? Because I will
We are not diverting the podcast.
Then you take it back right now.
Fine. I take it back. Let's talk about Still Dead.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Kelly Jones and I did the podcast Big Strong Yes. We talked about Brene Brown's Rising Strong, Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, and Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes in the first season of Big Strong Yes. Available now. Go find it. And so we went through that whole process together. And Kelly and I were friends before that. But something about podcasting about these very like deeply vulnerable things, you bond, you become tight. Like we our friendship just was like, yes, we are solid. And then when we were done, I was like, well, I don't want to do any more Big Strong Yes because I'm tired of weeping on the microphone every week. But I did not in any way want to live in a world where I wasn't podcasting with Dr. Kelly Jones. So I was like, what do we want to do? And Kelly loves Angel. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I love Angel and I want to figure out why I love it so much because it can be really bad. And I was like, sold. Sold. When Dr. Kelly Jones says she wants to do something, you do it because she's amazing.
Yeah, except the part of that story that you skipped over is I wanted you to podcast about Angel and explain to me why I loved it. And then you said, come podcast with me. And then, but see, that was
I don't even remember.
Yeah, no. That was not part of my plan. I was like, I want to listen to you explain to me why I like the show. And you were like, great, we're going to do a podcast about it. And I was like, okay, cool. So
I don't think I understood that the question was that you wanted me to do it. I was like, oh, we're doing this together then. Okay. So yes, that was definitely a presumption on my end, but I probably would have forced you to do it anyway.
Yeah. It was super fun. It was super fun. And it still cracks me up because Angel is one of the best shows I have ever watched. And it is one of the worst shows that I have ever watched. And maybe maybe I'm just a contrarian and like I love the direct opposition within a thing. But you have this story world that for me is very little about Angel. This is Wolfram and Hart. Like it is a world in which magical books and magical libraries and multi-dimensional texts exist and they are housed and stored and chronicled in a goddamn evil law firm. Like, come on. And then you have Dark Wesley and Lila and Lorne and Darla and Spike and Illyria. And I'm like, yes, gimme, you know? Yeah. And we need the spinoff show about Wolfram and Hart so we can do the Still Evil podcast.
Yes, because that would be the perfect, like, you know, trifecta.
Yeah, it would have been, it would have been trilogy, great. So I still argue Faith should have come on as a full-time character and been the Slayer in Angel. And season 4 should be sucked into a hell dimension. But my favorite part of Still Dead were the Patreon ads. They still crack me up. And I have to say, like maybe for the last time, Lonnie, I'll take away your bucket.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
So good.
As a little aside, Ian Martin of Passion of the Nerd is my beloved. He's in the other room right now. And when we became friends some years ago, we were just friends, I asked him to make a GIF of that. So whenever I popped into one of his Patreon streams, he would play the thing, Lonnie, I'll take away your bucket. And it was all very funny. Then we started dating. And every time I would pop in and he would put that on, he would just cringe and be so uncomfortable because he's like, that's not the right way to treat a woman. Like... I don't want people to think that this is the way that I talk to you in real life. So it's always funny, but I still love I'll Take Away Your Bucket. And I actually have a bunch of posters that Mandy Kay who made for us based on the commercials that we did during that show. It was so much fun. Noelle, so your relationship with Angel is a little different. Yes. Right? Have you even watched any of it?
I have watched a couple episodes. I've watched a couple episodes of Angel. I actually randomly saw an episode of Angel way back in the day, and I was like, no, this is not my thing. And I watched a couple because while you were doing Still Dead, you had questions about what's going on here. Like, what is that? Why does this look this way? So I would, every now and then I would watch. I think I've seen maybe 3 episodes of Angel. It's not my thing. But I may or may not have listened to every episode of Still Dead. because I love you guys.
Oh, now that is love.
That is
to
love.
listen to every episode of a podcast about a show you are not interested in. But yeah, like the Angel, I had to talk about If Nothing We Do Matters, All That Matters Is What We Do, because that is the anchoring philosophical statement of my life. And the fact that it comes from Angel, no fucking shame. I am not the kind of girl that's going to sit here and fucking quote Camus. I'm going to tell you that I pull my philosophy of life from Angel. And that is what I teach my kids too. When my kids were like, hey, are we going to die? And you start having that conversation with them. And I'm like, hey, here's the thing. I don't know what comes after that. I can't tell you, but I can tell you this. The only thing that matters is what you do right now, every day. And that is the philosophy that I raised them with from this show that is, you know, hit and miss. We made the whole Still Dead. For those of you who have not yet watched Angel, listen to Still Dead. We will tell you which episodes you can skip. We will summarize them for you so that you don't really miss anything. And we'll tell you which ones to watch. You can get through the whole thing and you can talk about it with your friends who love Buffy. But yeah, it's a fascinating show and a fascinating discussion to have. And I was so glad that I got to have that discussion with Dr. Kelly Jones. It was so much fun.
Me too, baby. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. You know, everybody, how much I love to ask about the favorite part. Like, what is your favorite part? So we are going to go through a series of favorites on which I have not created a limit. It is not what is your favorite Buffy episode. It's list your favorite Buffy episodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Noelle and Kelly go first, and then I'll just fill in, you know, probably everything on their list is, I think, pretty much all on my list. But Noelle, go ahead and start first. What are your favorite Buffy episodes?
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed actually that we didn't like run these through a chart or something, because there's some overlap and there's also some like not overlap.
I'll correlate them when we get done.
Oh my God, of course you will.
God,
I love it.
best.
I love it. I mean, my all-time favorite episode of Buffy. Like, I know this is not a pick a favorite episode list, but my favorite is Hush. I love Hush so much. But my little list of favorites, and this was just in no particular order other than Hush, off the top of my head. Hush, Normal Again, Band Candy, Doppelgangland, which I would pretty much always podcast about. If we just wanted to do another episode about Doppelgangland, I would be here for that.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, we can totally do that. We can come back to Still Pretty like whenever we feel like and be like, let's rewatch this.
Let's just rewatch Doppelgangland. So good. The Body, not one to rewatch trivially, but still one of my all-time favorite episodes. Something Blue, Tabula Rasa, I Was Made to Love You, and honorable mention, Double Meat Palace. I know. It's a meat process. I'm sorry.
It's a meat process.
It's a meat
yes.
process.
All right, Dr. Jones, what do you got?
Okay, so I needed delimitations because this list was getting crazy.
Right, mine was too.
Yeah, so I limited myself to a dozen, and then I put them in order of appearance. So
nice.
across the seasons. But I have
love it.
3 that are bolded that I was like, okay, these 3 are Buffy for me. And I rewatched them all in prep, those 3 episodes. And correct, yes, they are all excellent. And they're still my 3 favorites. So Band Candy, Lover's Walk, The Wish, Doppelgangland, bold, rewatched, holds up. Hush, This Year's Girl, and Who Are You? I put them together because reasons. Family, Fool for Love, rewatched, still that good. Once More with Feeling, Tabula Rasa, Conversations with Dead People, which I will always love, and Storyteller.
Oh my God. That's a good list.
It's a good list.
All right, so I'm going to start with the ones that I have that you guys didn't also have. So these are the ones that were not on your list, at least as far as I was able to tell when I was, just checking them off as you guys did. The Zeppo is one of my favorites. I really, really love that. I love the different perspective and the flip of what the world looks like through Xander's eyes. I thought that was fun. The Replacement, which is another Xander-centric episode that I really love. Checkpoint from season 5, the one with the boy has clocked more time than all of your people put together. The Gift, end of season 5, which I think is amazing. Becoming, the end of season 2 that rips me open every single time I watch it. And another from season 2 that I think doesn't always, it has a lot of personal resonance for me is I Only Have Eyes for You, because it deals with Buffy's ability to forgive herself, which I have found with Buffy that a lot of the episodes that really speak to me are things that speak to my own specific emotional struggles. And I think in some way, my favorite episodes are the ones that either speak to those struggles or make me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
So that's my list, and also everything that you guys said.
Yeah. I Only Have Eyes for You was on mine. I had to, when I was narrowing it down to 12, I had to let it go. But it's a damn good episode. It is.
It's tough. It's tough. And another really difficult question is, who's your favorite Buffy character? Now, I'm going to go last on this one, too, because everybody knows the answer and it doesn't matter. Noelle, who's your favorite Buffy character? What do you have for this?
I mean, this is tough. This is really tough. Of the core cast, I think it's Willow. And as we all know, when Willow cries, I cry. But in terms of the character I'm basically always happy to see whenever they're on screen, it's Oz. I am always glad to see Oz.
Yes.
When Oz shows up, I'm like, yes, here for this. And I also love the minor vampires. I love Darla and Sunday and Vampire Harmony.
I love that we have so few female vampires, and those are all the ones that you love.
Well,
like, they stand out. They're
out.
Characters.
They stand out. The actors are all fantastic, and all three of them are doing a thing in their own way that just makes them so delightful. Like, they didn't have to go so hard on those characters. And I know we had the discussion way back in season 1 about how much I love Darla on Buffy, and Darla on Angel is a whole other thing. But I don't know. There's something about that level of, from Darla anyway, just camp that delights me so much. But yeah, you're right. We don't get a lot of female vampires, but the ones we do just
are good.
So delightful.
I would put Drusilla in that.
Drusilla,
camp too.
for
I don't know if
sure.
you like Drusilla as much, but oh my God, Juliet Landau, what she does with that character is nothing less than art.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Kelly, what about you?
Okay,
Tell me about your favorite characters.
No, we have to change this. Sorry, Jack. I have a thing. I'm doing a thing right here that is going to transition us into our favorite quote. So you have to go second and I have to go last. It's in the script.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, Jack.
Okay. I am very, very sorry. Okay.
There are instructions on the document, Lonnie.
I didn't. Wait, where are the instructions on the document?
Read it.
Oh, and speaking of favorite quotes. Okay, that's not an instruction. That's a thing. All right, Jack, edit none of this out. I love Kelly Jones schooling me live on the air. Cut nothing. I'm going to go ahead and go to my favorite character, which is, Spike. I love Spike. I love the arc for this character. I think that Spike was one of the first characters I had seen where I was conscious of what they were doing with the arc and how you take somebody from being like evil, bad, to somebody that you would root for and somebody that you would love, and what Spike's arc says about the possibilities of redemption. And redemption has always been a theme that for me, and possibly this might be tied to the reason that I love I Only Have Eyes for You as well, my lack of ability to forgive myself, even though I've never actually murdered anybody or done anything like really that bad. I still have a hard time forgiving myself for anything that I do. And the idea that Spike can be forgiven and redeemed, for what he's done because of what he's doing and how he's choosing to go from this time forward, how he got a champion's ending, a hero's ending. I love all of that. So Spike is probably my favorite, with honorable mentions to Anya, definitely Oz, like Noelle said, the one who makes you happy every time you see them. Willow, of course, because this is partially like I'm not convinced that this isn't Willow, the powerful witch, that this is not like her story. And I just Anya. Oh, I already said Anya. Sorry. I don't have these written down. I'm pulling them out. And Tara, of course, who is honestly like my my North Star for goodness. You know, for genuine goodness, not performative goodness, but genuine goodness, which is what I really, really love from Tara. So now is the point where I pretend that I didn't just get schooled by Kelly Jones. And I say, Kelly, who is your favorite Buffy character?
Okay, so on Buffy, my favorite character is Willow. On Angel, my favorite character is Faith. And on both shows, my favorite character is Spike.
Yeah.
I podcasted on Still Dead and Still Pretty. I'm picking more than one favorite character.
You can do whatever you want.
And I'm eating this banana. Lunchtime be damned. Speaking of favorite quotes, Lonnie.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for that seamless and off-the-cuff transition into our favorite lines. It was beautiful. All right. So here's the thing, guys, just a little bit behind the scenes here. I produce the show. So like, I'm always the one trying to pull in like segues, and I am notoriously awkward at it. And I'll just be like, okay, so now we're going to go to this. Boom. You know? And so Kelly Jones putting a lovely little segue in there and me fucking it up is so on brand.
It's so
for
perfect.
Lonnie running the show.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the most perfect thing, which is why we didn't edit that out. All right. So favorite lines from Buffy. And now that Kelly has thrown to me, of course, my first one is a Willow line. If you hurt her, I will beat you to death with a shovel. A vague disclaimer is nobody's friend. I say that a lot. I love that. I love Giles. Do you like my mask? Isn't it pretty? It raises the dead. Americans. I love that. You made a bear. Undo it. Which is, of course, Spike in Pangs. I may be dead, but I'm still pretty, which is the where we got inspired for the title of this podcast. And then, like, honestly, I maybe loves bitch, but at least I'm man enough to admit it. And everything that Spike says is, before that in that speech to Buffy and Angel in Lover's Walk. And I think, like, honestly, one of my favorites, one of the ones that touches my heart every single time is Tara looking at Willow and saying, I am, yours. Just, God, right in the heart feels.
It's a really good line. It's written as fuck, but it's a really good line.
It is. What about you, Noah?
Oh my God. Well, the one I say all the damn time, it's a meat process. Though I'm going to have to start hitting the pro harder because the line is, it's a meat process.
Yes.
I'm Cowboy Guy. I showed up on time, so I got to be Cowboy Guy. That is another one I say all the time, but I say it incorrectly, damn it. It's stuck in my head as I got here early, so I got to be Cowboy Guy.
And because of that, it is stuck in my head that way. And every day that I get to work super early, I walk up to the coffee maker and I'm like, I got here early, so I get to be Cowboy Guy. And that's not the quote, but I'm quoting Noelle, who is misquoting the show. And that is how it is in my head forever.
Well, because it is.
That is the spirit.
It's linked. For me,
yes.
That's absolutely what it is, Kelly. For me, it's linked to when I get somewhere early. I think I get here, I got here early, so I got to be Cowboy Guy. So I don't know. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep my rewrite. I mean, there's a long.
You say it however you want.
Listen, there's a long history of that in quotable lines from film and television.
Play it again, Sam.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille is not the line. Play it again, Sam is
Yorick,
not the line.
Him well.
We say this shit all the time.
Yep.
But I got a couple more favorite lines, and of course they're ridiculous. All monkeys are French. I am so gonna bite you.
Harmony for the win.
You can't do that. It's wrong. And tiny babies, which is Giles in Who Are You? And it's funny to me that two of my favorite lines come from Who Are You? And I didn't have that listed as a favorite episode, but I quote that episode all the time.
Some episodes are incredibly quotable while not necessarily being the favorite, although This Year's Girl and Who Are You are, definitely up there. They're good episodes. Kelly, give us your quotes.
Okay. The top three that I actually say all the time. Bored now, Willow. I've got a theory. It's a demon. Dancing demon. But mostly, I've got a theory it's a demon from Once More with Feeling. Out for a walk, bitch. Spike. I say it every time I go walking around the neighborhood. Tara, can we just skip it? Can you just be kissing me now? And like, I can't. Oh, God. It just kills me. Kills me. Yeah. If you aren't with me 110%, then get the hell out of my library.
Oh, I love that.
Willow. Thus endeth the lesson. Spike, I can just I just need that on a GIF.
Yeah.
I'm entertaining and educating, Andrew. Fucking love.
Wait a minute. I have to pause. Jack, keep this into. As Kelly is reading all of these, her amazing cat Calliope, who is the best cat in the world, is coming up to her and swatting at her earrings.
I'm trying so
and
hard.
And it was the most adorable thing. I love it.
She's being so naughty right now. Okay, one of my all-time favorites. Don't speak Latin in front of the books. Like, it's so good. Anya, when I'm having a bad day, I'm 1,120 years old. Just give me a freaking beer. I love it. And Spike, is everyone here very stoned? But Noelle and I quote Giles with the tiny babies all the time. Like, I made a smoothie the other day with the little bitty frozen blueberries, and I was like, tiny berries. I don't know why. It's so funny.
Well, I mean, part of the reason it's so funny is one of my favorite things that actors get to do is when someone who is an excellent actor has to play a character who is not a good actor. So Anthony Stewart Head, we know. That man can make exposition roll trippingly off the tongue. Like, it just occurred to him to say that. It just occurred to him to give you this ridiculous exposition rundown.
Which is the hardest thing.
Of the demon. Yeah. But in that moment, Giles is trying to be distracting. He's trying to act, and Giles is not a good actor. So trying to raise the stakes of the situation by just hitting tiny a second time and really hard. It's great. Yeah. It's great. You love it because
it's so much packed in to those 3 words.
It's a good actor doing bad acting, which is one of the most fun things to see. Yeah. And it's just fun to do. I mean, because so many things fit into that, tiny babies format. It's wonderful.
So funny.
It's wonderful.
So incredibly cute. It's so cute. All right. So, Noelle.
Yes.
What is your favorite part of Buffy?
Oh my God. Easy question, right? Super simple. My favorite part of Buffy. I mean, that's a tricky thing to answer because that can go a bunch of different directions, right? Like story-wise, it's the way Willow and Tara's relationship grows and changes and how devastating it is when they separate. I mean, I love the devastation of a good decision. Speaking of which, this is kind of a tangent, but I've been thinking about this for a week now. I have been trying to hash out why Anya's death in Chosen is so awful and also absolutely the right decision story-wise and world-building-wise. And I think it's because she has come full circle in that moment of battle.
Yes.
Anya started off as a human who didn't fit in with other humans. In the last battle, she's a human again in the sense that she's been de-demoned, but also in the sense that she's having a human experience. She's afraid. She's surprised that she's afraid. And she lets Andrew's suggestion of visualizing something nice comfort and support her. Now, of course, because she's Anya, she takes that into kicking ass territory, fueling her fight with her centuries-long loathing of bunnies. But oh well, it gets the job done. But in that last fight, Anya is human, having a human experience, doing exactly the human thing she just described to Andrew in the last episode about humans persisting in kind of ridiculous ways. And she's part of the group. She's done.
Yeah.
She's redeemed. She dies because she's arguably done everything she needs to do on her heroine's journey. Whereas Andrew, who we expect to die, and who he expects to die, isn't done yet. He still has more redemption and inclusion to seek out. That fight is an ending for Anya, but a beginning for Andrew. It still sucks. I still hate that she dies, but it's absolutely the correct answer.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do.
But back to favorite parts. Favorite parts of Buffy. I love any time the show gets really campy. Especially all that season 1 goodness of Darla and the Master just chewing all of the scenery. It's so goofy. It's so delightful. I love surprise Spike disappearances. It's corny, but anytime Spike is monologuing and then falls in a hole or gets zapped, my heart just sings.
It's wonderful.
It's so good. It's so good. I love anytime an actor gets to do something that's out of ordinary for their character. I love seeing Sarah Michelle Gellar play evil. I love seeing somebody get to play, you know, I've been taken over by my Halloween costume. Like any of those.
Right.
It's kind of, it's sort of gimmicky, but they all do it so well. It's so much fun to watch. I also love the really small moments that aren't necessarily meant to be hugely impactful, but that hit so hard because they feel genuine. So I'm thinking of Faith's excitement when the mayor is showing her her room. Or Tara just sitting with Buffy at the hospital because she knows how it feels when your mom dies.
Yeah.
And one of my absolute favorite parts of the show is the last scene with April the robot in I Was Made to Love You, where Buffy sits with April and talks to her as she shuts down. Or dies, really, because it's played like a character's death.
Yeah.
Buffy says everything April needs to hear in that moment with absolutely no judgment. And April is a robot. And then she ends up getting some insight into her own situation and fixation on relationships. But that's not why she says what she says and does what she does in that scene. Buffy does it because she has compassion for this other being who did everything, quote unquote, right. Everything she was literally programmed to do, and still ends up alone and confused and questioning her own worth. It's fucking masterful. And it's one of the most genuinely moving things in all of the show for me.
Yeah.
But zooming back out, that's something else I think the show does really well. People mess up or have things about them that don't work out very well or just don't work very well, period. And they can still be loved. I mean, you can be a literal werewolf and still be cared for.
Oh, God. All so
so
good. I
good.
love all of those answers.
Aw.
I love that if you ever ask Noelle a question, you always get such a deeply thoughtful answer. And it is one of my favorite things about Noelle. I love Noelle
Aw,
for so many reasons, but baby,
know.
that is one of my favorite things about you. Dr. Kelly Jones, tell me, what is your favorite part of Buffy?
Well, I mean,
Or what are your favorite parts?
Yeah, I mean, we might have just
Yeah.
had it with Noelle making me like almost cry about a robot shutdown. That was beautiful,
Yeah.
honey. That was
Beautifully
beautiful.
expressed.
I love you so
Yes.
much. And you're so right about you know, yes, you are loved. I mean, that is almost a foundational aspect of this show, which makes it almost the exact opposite of Angel, in which there is no space for love to last. So it's very different, and I didn't see that until that brilliant explanation just then. My favorite part of Buffy, I'm sorry, we have books everywhere. We have the library in the high school, and then we have the books in the magic shop, and we have research mode. They literally have research mode as a character. Research mode, like,
Yes.
come on. Like,
The
it's-
library is a character.
library is a character. The books, you know, are but research mode is a thing this show does on purpose, and I love it so much. I love all of Spike. I love Spike as a teacher, especially when he's teaching Buffy about Slayers and demanding spicy buffalo wings as payment
Oh my God, how did I forget Spike and food?
You love Spike and food.
The hedonism of Spike.
Oh my
yes,
God.
you could write a whole book on that.
Oh my God, Spike crunching up Weetabix in the blood to give it some texture.
Yes.
What is wrong with me?
I mean,
I'm like
for
weeping
real.
over a robot and totally forgot my most favorite part of all of Buffy, which is how much Spike just loves the world because that's where food and stuff are. Like,
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
Spike loves food. Oh, and also on your list of favorite things, where are Riley's arms?
Oh
I
my
mean, come on.
God. Okay. Oh my God. Anyone who's listened to all of Still Pretty knows that I don't like men, but I like Riley. He is just so pretty. He is so pretty to look at.
He's very pretty.
Yeah. So yes, I love Spike. But it's funny because he has this poetic soul, right? What happens if you turn a poet into an evil vampire, right? You don't lose your ability to see multiple perspectives of the world. And that makes Spike an excellent teacher. Like, we get some fantastic pedagogy through Spike in this show. And it's very lightly done, but I freaking love it. It makes me so happy. Willow's brilliance and not the fact that she just snaps her fingers and knows the answer. Like, this is a very intelligent, powerful person, but she earns her talent through study and practice, like a lot of study and practice. And that but one favorite moment, like for some reason, and I don't know why, this will tell you everything you need to know about me. Oz giving Willow the little Pez witch, and Willow says, "What's the occasion?" And Oz says, "Pretty much you are." Like hashtag romance. I can't. It's
Oz is the ideal.
oh,
Oz is the best boyfriend.
Oz is
Yeah.
he's just one of the best people, and his consistency of character all the way through, and also on Angel, he's so wonderful. But then we get that one moment in Doppelgangland where Oz just tops Angel, and he's like, Vampire Willow walks into the bronze, and Oz goes to Angel, "Get Buffy. Do it now." And like the whole world obeys when Oz commands. And I love it. Sarah Michelle Gellar pretending to be Faith, pretending to be Buffy. Faith in Buffy's body.
Oh my God.
You can't do
So
that.
amazing.
It's naughty. Oh God. It's so good. All the snark. Also Drusilla. I love Drusilla. The real arcs we get from Spike and Faith and Willow. Queer sex represented on screen as magic. I'm just going to say those rose petals, y'all, and like leave it there. Buffy choosing to share her power with the potential slayer. Spike choosing to get his soul. Willow choosing to own her own magic. Like, and women changing the damn world. But ultimately, I can't help myself. Like, if I had to say one favorite thing, it is the use of school as the metaphor that runs all the way through the show, because curriculum shapes reality for better or for worse. And the way that they thread that through, I don't know if they did that on purpose. I don't know if they even realized how deeply they hit it, but they did a beautiful job. And this is a show about how learning changes the world and how we think about what we learn and what we choose to learn and how we apply that. But the use of school as it grows and changes and literally blows up and, comes back and, it is brilliant. And I wish that was the dissertation I had written. It's that good.
Oh my God.
What
That's
about
amazing.
you, baby? What's your favorite part?
Oh my God. Well, there's so much. But when I think about if I had to pick one moment in all of Buffy that I think is the most powerful thing for me, I think it's that emotional catharsis at the end of season 2. I still weep from the depths of my soul whenever I watch that. And, despite what y'all may have experienced if you listen to Big Strong, I don't actually cry that much, typically. I don't like to. I shut down those emotions. I put on a happy face and I go through my day, which is why I'm damaged the way that I am, or maybe because of the way that I'm damaged. But anyway, so I'm a little emotionally constipated, and this part of the show always wrecks me because Buffy loses everything. like in one moment, but she chooses to do the right thing. And there's that moment when he is playing with the sword and he points it at her and he says, no friends, no family. What do you have left? And she catches the sword between her hands and says, me. And that is, to me, such a defining moment of self-actualization, of knowing what it is to do the right thing, of living in heartbreak and yet getting up and fighting your way out. Everything at the end of that season, at the end of Becoming Part 2, for me, speaks to why Buffy is one of the best TV shows that has ever been on TV, why it is such an important piece of media and storytelling, is because it connects us with that part of ourselves that will still get up and fight for the right thing no matter what. And so there's so much that happens in that episode that just fucking destroys me, and I have to watch it with regularity. Like by regularity I mean like once every couple of years, because it is the one thing that allows me to access that part of myself that allows me to like feel all of those things. And I love that this story has that kind of power. I mean, some smaller things. The moment with Giles in Innocence, after she's slept with Angel and Angel has turned evil and she feels like it's her fault. And this is something that I think, many people who are raised to be caretakers and nurturers, which happens to people who present feminine, that for some reason, whatever goes wrong for somebody else or whatever somebody else does, we often feel like it's our fault, and we're trained to feel like it's our fault, And then there's that moment where Giles says, if it's judgment you want, I'm afraid you won't get it from me. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. He is explaining to her that this is not her fault, that this is not something that she did, that she didn't fuck him evil, and that evil is something that happened to him and that's not for her. And there's something about that moment when he says that allows for that lift, because in that moment, I'm always with Buffy. I identify with how she feels about that she feels like it's her fault, like she did something wrong, like it must be something that she did. And part of that is a control fantasy that if everything is my fault, I can fix everything that's broken, and that's something that I have struggled with my entire life. And sometimes things are not your fault. Sometimes you just have to accept that they turned out the way they turned out and it sucks, but it's not something you did and you didn't do anything wrong. That, for me, having Giles say that to her felt like Giles saying that to me, and that has always been really powerful. The moment in Touched, we just recently talked about this, where Spike sits down with Buffy and says, I love you because of who you are. I love how you try. It's got nothing to do with me. And that ability for Spike, who has basically been the defining example of immature love up until this point, up until he gets his soul, the defining example of selfish love, the defining example of love that is all about the person doing the loving. It is about possession and obsession and all of these very, very dark things. When he finally gets it, what it means to actually love somebody that way, and is able to express that to her. And then she is able to listen to him and hear that from him, because every other time he said, I love you, which granted, he said it before he had a soul, right? She was like, no, you don't understand what love is, And here we have Spike, the guy who could never understand what love was, who never got it. He's the one explaining it to her. Mm-hmm. He's the one explaining how he loves her and showing his work, right? I absolutely love that. And the last thing I think, and when I talk about my favorite parts of Buffy, I think I talk about the things that make me feel the most deeply, you know? Mm-hmm. And Tara's goodness is one of those things. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about the difference between Tara's goodness and the quote unquote white hat good character that's capital G good and never does anything wrong, and how I usually hate those characters. I hate the capital G good characters. But Tara's goodness, I think, is internally sourced rather than externally performed. And for me, that is where goodness matters. Goodness matters for the person that nobody's watching. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's patting her on the head and telling her, oh my goodness, you're such a good person, right? She just is. She's just good. She's just kind. And honestly, in a lot of my interactions, especially in interactions where I am frustrated and tired and not giving people the benefit of compassion and empathy. And, and I will say I put myself in that list of the people that fail to get compassion and empathy from me. I think that asking myself the question, what would Tara do, is not a bad way to combat that tendency in myself. And she's just honestly one of my favorite parts of the show for that reason. And because when I see her in a scene with somebody, her goodness, her kindness, it always warms me. The way she is with Buffy in The Body, the way she is with Buffy in season 6, just everything about her is so loving and kind. And I really look to her to be an example, for me. All right, so let's move into what's your favorite part of Still Pretty? I'll go ahead and go first. And I have to say, the honest answer is working with you two. Kelly is the invisible third host of the show, has been involved with it from the beginning, has given us multiple incredibly brilliant insights that we cite on the show. But that is a cheater answer. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and actually talk about the show. I have to say it is the episode that no one is ever going to hear. When Noelle and I first talked about doing Buffy, we wanted to do a trial run. I did not want to ask them to make a 3.5-year commitment of their life without having done the thing and get a sense of how they feel about it. At that point, Noelle had never podcasted before. We didn't know if they would like it. It was such a huge commitment. So we chose Hush and we wrote our notes and recorded a sample of the podcast. And I have never seen anybody who comes out of the gate. If you had told me that Noelle had been doing this for 20 years at that point, I would have believed it. They were so good on mic. The mic technique was amazing. Their voice was amazing. Their insights were brilliant. It was like Christmas morning and somebody had just put a perfect co-host into a box and was just like, here, Lonnie, have this. It was serendipity beyond my most wild dreams. I knew how smart Noelle was, which is of course why I asked them to do this with me. But it was just such incredible surprise and delight to have them be so perfect from jump. It was so easy. Working with Noelle has been one of the easiest things I have ever done in my life. And it was just like it was meant to be. It was so wonderful. And so when I think about the moment that I knew that this was going to work, the moment that I knew that Still Pretty was going to be an amazing show to do, was that moment. And nobody will ever hear that episode because I think I trashed it afterward.
I heard it. It was fantastic. It was awesome.
It might be floating around somewhere. If I find it, I'll put it in as a bonus episode on the Still Pretty feed. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not complete. That test run was so much fun. Yeah. And also so ridiculous because I genuinely had no idea what I was doing, to the extent that I had all the wrong cords and wires and connectors for my mic and computer. I completely lost power. It's so funny. It was such a delight doing that. And I was so, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was so pleased and surprised that it went as smoothly as it did, and that you were so delighted because, as I say, I like being a supporting character. It's my favorite thing to do. That test episode also kicked off the years-long tradition of me podcasting in ridiculous positions and locations.
Noelle is podcasting from their car.
I am. That first
been every
one,
week for a long time.
Yeah, that first one I did wedged between a bed and a wall in a space about the size of a lunchbox. And most of the show has been recorded in the backseat of my 2007 Prius, Stella. But I have also recorded under a desk in a pillow fort. So, you know, just me getting in ridiculous positions is one of the things that makes the show work, apparently. I can also confirm that Kelly was often the third host of the show behind the scenes. More than once, I have texted her, what am I going to say about XYZ episode? Because I'd be totally stuck. And she'd ask me some fucking brilliant question and then I'd be off to the races.
Oh my God.
Because Kelly thinks about stories in this really fun space where narrative and especially fantasy and philosophy overlap. So you'll be talking about some element of an episode that you feel kind of weird about. And she'll go, well, yeah, you feel weird about that because it implies systemic Plato's cave bullshit, something, you know, but like smart. Like a smart answer, but like that kind of thing. But to actually answer the question, what's your favorite part of Still Pretty? I have two answers. One is cheeky and one is serious, and you get to decide which one I tell you first.
I like cheeky.
You like cheeky first?
Cheeky.
Okay, so the cheeky answer, my favorite part of Still Pretty is when I say something that I think is totally fine, you know, maybe it's a little funny, and Lonnie just loses her mind. The best is when I think I've said something completely regular and Lonnie spits out her tea.
I have done that a couple of times. That you've caught me a few times.
I have just said like, but what I love so much is that in my mind, like I have just said like a normal regular thing and you lose it. It's so funny because
because you're so brilliant.
Well, and also, I mean, I don't know. It's maybe not obvious from this show, but Lonnie doesn't laugh at just anything. So when you crack her up, it's kind of like you won something.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Aw. Well, you win a lot.
Yeah, I win. I mean,
crack me up. And the thing is, there is like one of the things that delights me about you is that you think so differently from the way I think. And so the insights that to you seem like just an average thing, like blow my brain apart. And it's not just laughing. It's the, oh my God, that is so brilliant. I'm going to be unpacking that for a couple of weeks, which happens probably more often than the big laugh. So you win something from me, like pretty much every episode.
It's just delightful. And also it's fun. You know, it's fun to surprise myself in that way because I don't always realize that what feels obvious and like normal and regular and everyday to me is not. So, you know, I get to see how I think through doing this show, which brings me to my serious answer, actually, to what my favorite part of Still Pretty is. You know, for as much as I think about film and television and how often I can't turn off the part of my brain that's looking for visual leitmotif or themes or composition or references to other visual media, it's easy to fall into the binary of I like this or I don't like this and kind of leave it at that. But when you're podcasting about something week after week and having a conversation about what's going on and what you respond to and what you don't, you have to dig into why. So, okay, I like this, but why? This leaves me cold, but why? And that gets you into a really fascinating space where you're watching yourself watch something and respond to it. So doing Still Pretty gave me a lot of insight into what I respond to in terms of television, how I engage with visual storytelling, and why my favorite parts are my favorite parts.
Oh, I love that. Kelly, the invisible third host. How about you?
Well, if Buffy hasn't warned you about making people invisible, I don't know how to help you. Oh my God. It's mostly the two of you making me laugh. Like, I love listening to the two of you because I am within one episode, I am going to laugh and I'm going to pause and think, which is just fantastic. And listening to your two different perspectives, I have seen things visually in Buffy that I would not have seen without Noelle's perspective. And Lonnie, you did an episode of Still Pretty when you were finishing up the video. I think it was on video, where you just broke down what is a love story and what is a romance. And that was one of those paradigm shifting, deep story ideas that has just stayed with me. And I can see it, especially as the two of you have gone through these 7 seasons together. I can see all the way through how that pulls. This is a love story of a woman and her work. This is a love story of two best friends. You know, one is a slayer and one is going to take over the world. And it's actually Willow's show, but whatever, it's fine. It is literally a love story of Spike and the world. You know, we joke about him loving the world because it's a happy meal on legs, but in the end, he dies for the world. He chooses to do that. He saves the world. It is a love story of a snarky, god, sexy poet vampire with a love of the world. I mean, come on, like you can't do better than that. It's fantastic. And getting to talk about a show that I love with two people I love on the rare occasions that I got to come in and play around with y'all. But it was so fun. Aww. But you two have just done an amazing job. And I just want to take a minute to say 7 seasons of television is a lot of episodes of Still Pretty. You guys have been amazing. Y'all have been so much fun to listen to. I have learned from you. I have enjoyed it. Thank you. I know a lot of people are hanging out with us today, watching. This is a big deal, you know. And Noelle, I've never seen someone come out of the podcasting gate as gracefully as you did. Like, I will always be a little bit jealous, you know, and like also it's a little bit about your hair, but like you're just fantastic. But Lonnie, your commitment to this work and what you have brought to it, what you have taught us from what you have learned of this show, and just the fucking grit that you were like, all right, I'm halfway through season 6 and my whole life has changed and whatever, I'm going to finish it. And you know what? I'm going to start it over and do the way I want to do it. I will always love that about you, you know, and this is your own way of showing, this is my choice. This is where I'm directing my energy. This is what I'm doing. And you've done it and it's been beautiful and I love you both. So congratulations on 7 seasons of shenanigans and tomfoolery and madness. So good job.
Thank you so much.
Baby.
And you know, that is so incredibly sweet. And I wasn't going to cry. And then Kelly Jones made me cry. So, you know, whatever. One thing that I want to add before we go into our last closing of the Still Pretty podcast is that we asked for fans to send us audio clips. And so a whole bunch of people did. And those are all going to be stitched together at the end of this episode. So today is a day when you don't want to, you know, skip to the next episode in your podcast app until you finished and listened to everything. But one of the things, I've listened to every comment as they've come in, and some people have sent letters and some people have, you know, posted on social media and that kind of thing. And the thing that kept coming up when people said, the question that we asked them is, what was your favorite part of Still Pretty? And the answer that we got, I think more than any other, was the deep love and respect between us. You know, that the way that we are as friends, the way that we love each other, the way that we learn from each other, the way that we honor each other. And to me, I felt like that was such an incredibly powerful thing, because I did this podcast because my life had fallen apart and you guys were the ones who were there. Fuck. Yes, you guys were the ones who were there when that happened, and that I got to reclaim this part of myself from this very, very dark space with two people who are so smart and so strong and so beautiful and so kind and loving. I don't think I could ever express to you like how much that meant to me. And now we're gonna pull the music up, Jack. We're going into the close.
Going in.
All right. That is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with us these last few years. It has been an honor and a privilege. We asked fans of the show, as I said before, to send us audio clips of their favorite parts of Still Pretty. Stay tuned after the ending music to hear those clips. And thank you so much to everyone who sent something in. After being the voice that you listened to all these years, it was so wonderful to hear you all, and thank you.
You can find Lonnie on Twitter at Lonnie Diane Rich, me at Noelle Aloud, and Kelly at Dr. Kelly Jones.
Be sure to go to chipperish.com to find out what other podcasts we have going on. Right now, Lonnie is doing Endless, a Sandman podcast with DC Comics editor Elisa Quitney. And once Lonnie gets the How Story Works book done, for which I have her on a tight deadline, we will be back with the How Story Works podcast.
And for the last time, this episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to Abby, Alice, Christina, Erica, Kevin, Kristen, Michael, Rose, Sarah, Shelley, Stephania, and Stephanie. And this week's special message for our power producers: don't speak Latin in front of the books.
This episode of Still Pretty was edited by Chipperish content editor Jack Cram. Jack? Why, yes, I would be Buffy. May I help you? Buffy. You can't do that. It's wrong. You can't do that because it's naughty. Because it's wrong. Because it's wrong. You can't do that. It's wrong. I'll kick your ass. We thank you all so much for sharing this journey with us. So until we meet again, into every generation, a Slayer is born.
One girl in all the world.
She alone will wield the strength and skill to fight the vampires, demons, and the forces of darkness.
She is the Slayer.
This is Steph. I really enjoyed both podcasts and wanted to thank Lonnie, Dr. Kelly, and Nicole for their hard work and insights. I think my favourite part was the Watchers Council guest appearances. They always made me laugh.
Hi there, Lonnie and Noelle, with a special shout out to Dr. Kelly Jones. This is James from New York City. I'd have to say my favorite part of Still Pretty is how much I've learned to understand the experiences of others and to be mindful of how we portray people in our fiction, be it women, people of color, LGBTQ, or even the classic straight white man. You helped me understand their experiences not only in fiction, but in real life. I'm going to miss your discussion of Buffy, easily one of my all-time favorite shows. Thanks for all you've done and will continue to do.
Figuring out my favorite part has been really difficult because Still Pretty has meant a lot to me over the years. But I would have to say that my favorite part has been attending the live recordings, having good conversations with great people about a show that I love. Thank you.
Hi, Lonnie. Hi, Noelle. Hi, Dr. Kelly. This is Sarah from Victoria. So my favorite part of the podcast, other than the conversations in the Zoom call, my favorite part of Chipperish has always been the way the hosts speak to and listen to one another. In the world we live in, it's so valuable to hear queer experience listened to by a straight person and treated with respect. The valuing of expertise is sadly, unfortunately, kind of rare these days. The valuing of someone who is othered, the valuing of their expertise, even more so. That is a special thing, and it's my favorite thing.
Guten Tag to Lani, Noelle, and Dr. Kelly Jones. My favorite part is you guys. My name is Dana. I'm a 30-year-old plus-size mixed-race woman from Germany. To say I felt out of place my whole life is an understatement. So listening to you talk about my favorite TV show has taught me so much about old and outdated power structures like the patriarchy and all the other isms. I will never see the world the same again because of you, insightful and intelligent women. You have shown me so much truth and taught me very well. I've written this down because the first couple of times I tried to sound it out in my head, I cried. I will be re-listening because to not have new episodes will be very sad. So all I want to say is thank you very, very much.
Hi, this is Alice in Nashville, and my favorite part of Still Pretty, well, it's two things. First of all, it is you both, Lonnie and Noelle, and occasionally Dr. Kelly, just sharing things that I never thought about while watching the show, especially Noelle. We think so differently, but I love every week hearing your point of view and bringing things to focus that I never would have noticed before. As to the show, I think hands down the thing that sticks with me that I remember always is the intro that you did for The Gift, which made me cry a lot and gets me kind of teary-eyed every single time I think about it. Thank you guys so much for Still Pretty, and I can't wait for what happens next.
My name is Arlene from the state of Maine. I have enjoyed Still Pretty for the last 2 years when I binge listened from the beginning in order to catch up to where you were in season 3. I love hearing Noelle's observations on the filming choices, colors, and all that, combined with Lonnie's brilliant narrative theory, especially when you get into how you would have liked to have made it better. But I gotta say, my favorite part of Still Pretty is by far your dynamic. The way that you make each other belly laugh and have such love and respect for each other. And when it's the two of you with Dr. Kelly Jones, I just think #friend goals. I love you. Thank you for the work you put into creating a podcast that covered 7 seasons of Buffy.
Hi, my name is Laura from Springfield, Missouri, and I really love the podcast. My favorite moments have been when Lonnie contrasted romance and love story when talking about Buffy's relationship with Spike. Even before I found the podcast, I'd thought of a parallel between the Lizzie Darcy from Pride and Prejudice and Buffy Spike pairs because of the time given for dislike to morph into respect and love. I felt vindicated to know that I wasn't off base with that, and with the fact that I can't stand Wuthering Heights either. Thank you again.
Hello, my name is Shanga. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a longtime listener of Still Pretty. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share my gratitude and speak to some of the ways that your work here has impacted me. So I watched Buffy as a teenager in real time as it was airing, and like most of us, my love of this show is enormous. Buffy's journey impacted me deeply. I started university shortly after the series finished, and at some point I stumbled into a first-year Women and Gender Studies course. We were to pick a topic for our final essay, and I remember the first thing that I said was, well, I want to do an essay on Buffy, or maybe Faith. But as I tried to get into this work, it just wasn't happening. And I ended up doing my final project on Rina Virk. Rina Virk was a South Asian teenager living in British Columbia, Canada. And her story is really sad. She was murdered in the late 90s by her classmates. And there's a lot written about this case, and it's very clear that the reason she was murdered had everything to do with racism, sexism, homophobia, fatphobia, classism, ableism, saneism. She was 14, and she died in 1997, which is interestingly the same year that Buffy began, the same year that Buffy told us that she didn't want to die. This moment in my personal growth was really significant because as a young queer South Asian person myself, it propelled me on a journey of my own healing. And I followed the call to discover and recover myself in ways that Buffy the series never had room for me and never understood me. So in the following decade, I spent a fair bit of time in academia studying intersectional feminism and creative writing. I then went on to work in queer community, organizing performance spaces and creating and teaching art and writing. I started working professionally as an astrologer, a tarot reader, also predominantly in queer community. And all along, I went really deep into my own healing, familial, intergenerational, ancestral. The whole time, Buffy stayed with me, as I probably watched at least one episode per night every day, going through the series over and over again for many years. The thing about committing your life to ancestral healing, especially for me, is that at some point in your healing journey, everything will fall apart. Everything that is holding you back from who you really are to become in your empowerment, in your freedom, in your deepest expression of love. For me, that meant I had several significant relationships with family, friends, partners that all ended at once, and I was really alone. This was in about 2017, and that's when I found Lonnie's work on Buffy and on storytelling. I had taken a solo trip to New York City, and the whole time I just had your podcast in my ears. I couldn't believe that I found a place on the internet that was not just dedicated to this beloved TV show, but to the art and craft and study of stories, which is just everything I'm in love with too. After a tumultuous time in my life filled with so much loss, I felt like myself again. I felt excited and inspired and lighthearted. This work that you, Lonnie and Noelle and Kelly, have put out there and dedicated yourselves to every step of the way has kept me inspired and motivated and brought me back to what I have always loved and wanted to do, which is study and share my love of the technology of stories and storytelling. Now in 2021, I'm ready to return to that part of me who wanted to write an essay about Buffy all those years ago and now incorporate that into everything else I've learned and every other part of myself that I've found since then. And this wouldn't have come together for me in the same way if it weren't for the work and the community that you've built here with Still Pretty and Still Dead and all the other podcasts you do too. So now for my favorite part of Still Pretty, well, I was listening to your guest episode on Slayerfest 98, Lonnie, when you mentioned that perhaps Willow and Buffy is the main love story of this series. And I thought about it and I was like, I don't know. I feel like the central love story in Buffy is about a woman and her work. Buffy and her relationship to slaying, how she refuses it, embraces it, and ultimately how she uses it to change the world. That's my favorite part of Still Pretty. It is so clearly a love story between a woman and her work. And I'm emotional to say this because as someone whose central love story in my own life is probably also between myself and my stories, what I love so much about this space, too, is your partnership and your friendships with each other. So often I listen to your podcasts and I'm like, I want my own version of a Dr. Kelly Jones or a Noelle LaCroix. It is so special that you're not only doing work that you love, but you're doing it with people who you love. That comes across so clearly. And it is just such a beautiful possibility model that this is what I want in my own life too, in my own way, to do work I love with people who I love. And that's what Buffy is about, a love story between a woman and her work, but knowing that doing the work with people you love makes it so much more than it could ever be than if you were doing it alone. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this journey.
Hi, y'all. Shari here. I just wanted to say thanks to Lonnie and Noelle and Kelly, too, for letting me spend time each week listening to your in-depth and intelligent commentary on one of my favorite stories ever. With every episode of Still Pretty, I learned so much about story, characterization, writing for TV, and visual storytelling that I can't say thank you enough to you all. But, well, here goes. First off, thanks for putting in all the time and effort and soul into making Still Pretty such an amazing podcast to listen to. It was a hoot to laugh along with y'all, and sometimes I'd be out on a walk with my headphones in, and I'm sure people were wondering what the heck I was laughing at. But you also weren't afraid to tackle all of the harder, darker elements of Buffy, and the podcast is richer for it. Thanks also for the community you've built behind the scenes on the Chipperish Discord channel. It's full of really kind, generous people who love talking about and listening to all aspects of Buffy and beyond. And I probably wouldn't have met any of them without Still Pretty. Lastly, thanks, Lonnie, for going back and doing Buffy again your way. I think that's my favorite part.
Hey, Lonnie, Noelle, and Kelly, it's Ashley. Congratulations on a huge achievement. So you know that quotation that says, normalize changing your opinion when presented with new information? That right there has got to be my favorite part of your show. The thing is, I've been watching Buffy since I was 11 when the show premiered live. Over time, my opinions have evolved a ton, and one thing that keeps me loving Buffy is listening to critics who can help me pick apart and analyze the nuances of the show, especially the ones that don't hold up well. The discussions on Still Pretty are the best kind of commentary. Deep, critical, respectful. The mutual care between Lonnie and Noelle and their guest hosts is palpable. I love the way that you argue, holding space for the other's point of view, and even sometimes calling back to an evolved opinion in a later episode. It kind of feels like a recurring joke in a series, this moment of, I was there before, that the listener can join in on. Except, hey, instead of a world without shrimp, it's more like a world full of care, a world in which people can hold space for themselves and for others to grow. So that's without a doubt my favorite part. Thank you for all the insight on a show that means so much to me and so many others. All the laughs and above everything else, all the love. Can't wait to tune into your next projects.